And Epstein says to him, "Do you want to see the photos of Trump with girls in bikinis?"
Hmm. Hey, James, our guest is author, journalist, activist, and someone who is exceptionally well informed about almost everything, Sidney Blumenthal. Sidney, let's start with the Jeffrey Epstein files. Trump was rolled. Basically, you got to give great credit to those victims and to Ro Khanna and to Tom Massey and a few Republican women. They resisted it. Trump did every step of the way. And so now the House passed it, the Senate passed it, Trump's going to sign it. I am deeply suspicious of the Justice Department. Two things bother me. Number one, he launched a phony investigation of Democrats only by the Justice Department. And I can see them saying, wait a minute, we can't release files while we have ongoing investigations. And secondly, I don't trust Pam Bondi anyway. I think if there's bad stuff in there, am I being too conspiratorial?
I don't think you're conspiratorial. I think you're a pragmatic realist, Al. I think this is exactly the problem that we face right now, because somebody has figured out for Trump that the way to try and shut this down is to refer this to the Justice Department. And Pam Bondi put it in the Southern District of New York. She didn't give it to Lindsay Halligan, and who is screwing up the Comey cases. And they have a guy who is quite competent, Jay Clayton, who is the U.S. attorney there. And this is the way to bottle it up, because all they have to do is say, we can't comment on anything because it's under investigation. And in the meantime, they continue to smear and keep open the smears against targeted Democrats. That's but that doesn't end the Epstein files, because there are a lot of other avenues where it's open. And that's the problem that he faces. He can't shut it down.
Well, the one thing that's abundantly clear, there's stuff in there that Trump desperately does not want out. I don't believe it's just embarrassment, because nothing seems to embarrass him. There's not much evidence so far that he may have actually sexually assaulted one of those women. I don't know that, but the indications are maybe not. Do you have any guesses, any suspicions, any hunches of what he so desperately does not want out?
We don't know. We do know that there are credible reports from Bloomberg News and elsewhere that there are more than 1,000 FBI agents who've been working at their documents complex in Virginia, going through all of the Epstein files and the digital files, which include photographs and other materials, to redact Trump's name. And we also don't know what other names are being redacted at Kash Patel's instructions. And of course, he's acting on Bondi's instructions and, of course, on Trump's. So the cover-up is proceeding right now, even as we're talking.
Well, I don't, like you, I don't know what's in there, but Epstein's brother said he heard they are in the process of deleting stuff that's embarrassing. I don't know what he knows, but there's grounds for suspicion, because we have never seen a Justice Department, and I include the Nixon Justice Department. We have never seen a Justice Department so compromised. Whatever Trump dictates, they do. The minute he said, let's investigate Clinton and Larry Summers and other people, Pam Bondi said, yes, sir. She couldn't say it quick enough. There's nothing about this Justice Department that gives you any confidence, Sid, in their integrity.
No, about half of the professional staff of the Justice Department is now gone in less than a year. They've reduced whole sections of the Justice Department to nothing. The Public Integrity section, which investigates political corruption and other corruption, is down to 2 lawyers. The whole Civil Rights Division has been eviscerated. This is just a personal instrument for Trump at this point.
Final question before I turn it on this issue, before I turn it over to James. I have to say, I earlier praised Ro Khanna, Tom Massey, Marjorie Greene, and some others, and they deserve praise. A discharge petition is really hard. It's done very rarely, and they did it, and they stuck with it, and they deserve credit. Conversely, Mike Johnson was just outrightly dishonest. He said when the die was cast after fighting this thing for 7 weeks, he kept the House out. He wouldn't swear in the woman from Arizona, newly elected, because she would have been the last person that would have forced a discharge petition. And he said he's really upset because there should have been a full investigation. Why the hell did he stonewall this then for 7 weeks? Mike Johnson is as culpable in the cover up as the White House.
Yeah, political circumstances really, really were transformed in this period from which Adelita Grijalva in Arizona was elected in September. And now, when she was sworn in and was the key vote on the discharge petition, which triggered all the events that led the entire Congress basically to vote for the release of the Epstein files, we've seen almost a political revolution. Johnson was counting on this. This is my chief of staff back here.
I thought it was Pam Bondi, so I'm glad to know it's chief of staff.
Bondi was, just stonewalling the whole thing. And what's interesting in what happened in the last 24 hours with the consent of the Senate is that what happened was that Johnson objected, and he was very upset. And he proposed amendments that were not taken up by the Republican Senate Majority Leader, John Thune. And what were those amendments? That other names of, quote, private citizens be redacted. This is at the same time that Trump has said that certain designated named individuals are now under investigation by the Justice Department. But who are the other names that Trump wanted to be protected that he certainly got Mike Johnson to propose? And now Thune wanted nothing to do with it. It's a pretty interesting subplot here.
Yeah, it sure is. Turning over to James with the thought, it just underscores again the need for the Democrats to take back Congress next year, because that's the only way these things are going to be investigated. I don't think James Carville disagrees with that, but take over, James, with your Georgia sweatshirt.
Thank you. And I got my Georgia sweatshirt and I have my Ohio University Bobcat notepad here. So, Sidney, let's turn to politics, a topic that you and I share some passion for. Before the show, I was listening to my satellite radio. I was listening to Michael McConish and Mark Halpern. And their overwhelming consensus was this would have no effect on the MAGA base or Trump's polling. Do you see any weakening on the part of Republicans towards Trump, or do you agree with the Halpern-McConish thing that this will matter not to the Republican base?
Well, the Republican base is already flaking off from Trump, and his favorability number among Republicans is down not quite 10 points, but any amount down for Trump is potentially devastating for two reasons. One, he has overwhelmingly disapproval among Democrats and independents now, and two, that adds to it, and it drives his numbers below 40, which is where he's at in the latest polls. The other thing is his entire control over the Republican Party is dependent upon his absolute dominance of Republicans and his ability to wield that against all other Republicans. And as it weakens, his control weakens, and then you get something like the Epstein files. And in terms of elections, we've seen in the November 4th election that Republican turnout is way down. And that's because of Trump's great unpopularity, and Democratic turnout is way up.
So this morning we were sharing the results of a Marist NPR poll, which is
Right.
a highly regarded poll, and tell our listeners, tell our viewers, what did that poll show, and why does it kind of disprove this McConaughey helping theory?
Well, the key finding of the Marist poll for National Public Radio is that there's a 14-point generic advantage for the Democrats in the congressional midterm election that's coming next year. That is an extraordinary number. The number for the Democrats in 2018, when they regained control of the House and won about 40 seats, was a little more than 8. This isn't just an untold number. My feeling was not surprised, although it's going to shock a lot of people. And people are going to say it's too unreal to be true, because what this will translate to is an enormous Republican defeat and Democratic wave in a year from now as circumstances increase. But my thought was from the November 4th election, which was the equivalent of of a midterm rejection of Trump. And it included gubernatorial races in New Jersey and Virginia, a referendum in California, and elections in Pennsylvania to Georgia, and so on. And what they all showed was that the polls were off to begin with. They showed them much closer, and the Democrats won by much greater margins. And the turnout was very different from what was predicted. The Republican turnout fell enormously, and the Democratic intensity was often equivalent to that of a presidential election. If you took those numbers and you created formulas, you would get even more than the generic number in the Marist poll. So there's no telling what will happen in the midterm elections, but the idea that all this is somehow meaningless is more than wishful thinking. It's sheer nonsense.
So one of the things that you believe, tell us why you think they may be photographs the FBI may be in possession of certain photographs, and what evidence is there that these photographs exist? Just tell you. I think you know something about this potential.
So I conduct a podcast myself with my colleague, Sean Wilentz of Princeton University. We call it the Court of History. It's found on the Legal AF channel of Midas. And that on our podcast, we had Michael Wolff early on. And Michael was the one who discussed what he had been shown himself by Jeffrey Epstein. And let me tell you the story of what happened as a result of that. First of all, Michael Wolff, a journalist and author, had a long personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And he says he has also recorded more than 100 hours of tapes that he has in his possession that have not been made public. He hasn't made them public. Some of the emails, just 2 of them, came out last week, and they were very damaging to Trump, in which Epstein talks about how Trump knew about what was going on, and that he's the dog that doesn't bark in the night about Trump, what he knows and what he did. And that's in the Epstein-Wolff emails. But Michael told me something else. He told me that Epstein took him upstairs in his vast townhouse off Fifth Avenue and went into a room and opened his safe and took out a dozen Polaroid pictures showing him Donald Trump with a group of scantily clad underage girls. And what Michael said was they were pointing and laughing at a stain on the crotch of his pants. So Michael says that Epstein showed him these photographs more than once, and then he put them back in his safe. Then, in July of 2019, Epstein was arrested again, and the FBI raided his townhouse and took the contents of his safe. We may presume that those photographs were in the safe or not. So as a result of our podcast, both Kash Patel and Pam Bondi were asked about these photographs in congressional hearings. Ted Lieu asked Kash Patel and actually showed a clip from our podcast where Michael Wolff explains what he saw. And Kash Patel stammered and didn't have an answer. Then Senator Sheldon Whitehouse in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing of Pam Bondi also asked her, and she had no response and said she didn't know about it. Well, do these photos exist? Where are they? Are they in the possession of the FBI? And are they being redacted? And if you want to get conspiratorial, are they being destroyed? Is the evidence being suppressed in one way or another?
Haven't these photos been mentioned somewhere else besides about your and Sean's interview with Michael Wolff did more to kick this story to the point where it is than any single thing that I've seen in print or anywhere else. It just was started to frame it. But isn't there some further evidence that someone else mentioned the possibility of photos?
Well, in the emails that have been released just in the last week from the Epstein estate, there's an exchange between Jeffrey Epstein and a New York Times reporter named Landon Thomas Jr. And Epstein says to him, "Do you want to see the photos of Trump with girls in bikinis?" Now, I don't know if Epstein showed them to that then New York Times reporter and whether he can account for them. But Epstein certainly was offering them around. And that seems to be some sort of confirmation about what Michael Wolff was saying.
It certainly does. Albert?
Well, I would just going back to where you began, when it comes to Mark Halpern and Sidney Blumenthal, that is a no contest. Halpern's become a Trump sycophant, and I think Sidney will forget more about this story than Mark Halpern knows.